Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade coming to you from my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Today we're going to talk about tanks, more specifically heavy tanks. Heavy tanks were something that they brought in World War One. They wanted something with more firepower and something to be a big door knocker. You could just knock down fortifications and move right in and move in behind them. But in reality, by the time they got to World War II, they found that heavy tanks were actually better on defense because they didn't move very fast and they weren't very mobile. So if you could already be in position, if you already had the high ground, or if you were hidden in a tree line, or something like that, then you were better off. The firepower was a bit more than a medium tank. In the game of Axis and Allies, the tanks that are generally used are medium tanks. So these would be something that I'm adding to this game. They're going to cost a little bit more, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, a regular tank or a medium tank in the game costs 6 IPCs. I'm going to make these heavy tanks cost 8. And the biggest reason for that is I'm increasing the defense capability, and the biggest, the key to these is that they're going to be able to absorb hits, kind of like a capital ship. How a capital ship can be hit once, and it would take a second hit to sink it. Well, they're going to absorb 2 hits. But not both in the same round. So first round of firing, they will absorb 1 hit, and the second round of firing, they will absorb 1 hit, and the third round of firing, and fourth, and so on. If a battle was to go that long, they would not absorb any more hits. The cost, like I said, is 8. The movement ability is 1. So regular tank is going to move 2 spaces, and the heavy tank is only going to move 1. So obviously there won't be any blitzing with a heavy tank. The attack capability is going to be 3. It's going to be the same. The guns were a little bit bigger than a medium tank, as I said before, but not that much. What was really different about these tanks compared to the medium tanks was the armor, and that's why I'm going to allow them to absorb the hits. You could bounce shells off them. You pretty much had to hit them in just the right spot in order to take them out. Heavy tanks after the Second World War, they were not as effective because the ordnance was changed as the years went on. And so once you started getting into laser guided missiles that could explode a lot more, than it didn't matter how thick your armor was going to be. So there's no they were phased out by the last one. I think was phased out in 1960. So after the war they weren't that good. Anyway, so the attack capability is 3. It's the same as the medium tank, but the defense capability is 4. And that's because they didn't, with the lack of mobility and the lack of speed, they could just sit there for the most part, not have to move very far, dig in, and just tee off with their heavy guns. And as I said, you can absorb 1 hit each. Now what we're looking at here, I purchased a whole lot of extra tanks over the last little while. On the left side here, these are Italian tanks. Now you see the smaller one, that was supposed to be my heavy tank. There's not a whole lot of options when it comes to Italian tanks. So I'm going to switch that around and make the out-of-box tank my heavy tank, and the newer tank that I bought there, that's going to be the medium tank. And then next we have the out-of-box German tank, and then the heavy tank that I'm going to be using is the out-of-box tank from the America set. The game America. If there's one thing that is a drawback for me with the America game, I really like the game. It's just that they make the pieces in gray, so they're not as easily transferable to Axis and Allies board, unless you're going to use them as the Anzac. And then next here we have the out-of-box tank for the Japanese. That's going to be the medium tank, and beside it, this is from America as well, but not the out of box one. The out of box one was huge. Here, let me just grab one. I'll show you. Oh yeah, I got them put away right now. I'm not going to take them out of the box. But anyway, they're a lot bigger and they're hard to fit into the smaller territories that are on this board. So that's actually from a set called Bring in the Heavies, that tank. And then next we have the Russian tanks. That's the out of box one. And this one here is one that I bought. This is a KV tank, KV2 I believe. And those were a heavy tank in the war. And then we have the French tank. From the out of box, you're going to use that one and then it's going to be gone. And same with this one. I only bought one of these because he's going to be gone right away in the first turn too. This is an RL-44. They use these even after the war, the French. And then we have the Anzac, the out of box tank, and Churchill tank is going to be the heavy tank. And the Americans, I believe this is a Sherman tank, the out of box tank, and then this is the out of box tank from the America game. And you can see how much bigger it is. And then down in front here we have the out of box tank from the Axis and Allies. And then this is what is this one? Oh, it's one of those tortoise tanks. I really like this one. It's just a beautiful sculpt. I think tanks and carriers are my favorite pieces in the Axis and Allies game. Carriers because you can load them up with planes, but tanks are they just look cool to me. So I really like playing with those. Anyway, let me give you a demonstration of how these are going to work. So let's just pan over here. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the Japanese on the continent of Africa, and that's not normal. So let's just put these Japanese tanks in here, and then we'll put these British tanks in here. I just set these up just for a demonstration. This isn't part of what's going on in the game. Okay, so as I said, you can't blitz these tanks. So he wouldn't be able to go over here and take this French territory and then go over to here. You could do it with this, like this, and then put your little flag on there. Okay, that's yours now. And then with this tank, go straight in here, like this. Let's move these ones back, and then move everything up here. All of this stuff's going in there. And the fighter as well. Okay, so then we start rolling, and let's say the Japanese hit 4 times, and the British hit 3 times. So we'll take off 4 of these. Oh, we're only going to take off 3 of these, right? Because we're absorbing a hit with this heavy tank here. And then we're only taking off 2 of these. Okay, so that's the first round of combat done. And then the Japanese elect to continue the fight. So we go ahead and roll again, and this time the Japanese get 4 hits. So that's all 4. That's these 3 plus an absorbed hit for this tank here. Because this tank defends it the most, we're going to leave him behind. And let's say they get 3 hits. So that's the second hit absorbed by this tank, plus 2 more. And then this is what we're left with. And then the last round of combat, well, they hit that tank about 6 times, and then it hits back, so we take 1 off. So that's how your combat would go with that. And then of course you'd put one of these on up here. And that's how combat works. So you don't absorb both hits in the first round. You absorb 1 hit in the first round and 1 hit in the second round, and that's it. If you can take the guy out in the first round, that's great, because then he doesn't get a second shot, and that would be what you would want to do for sure. During the war, when they were making these tanks, one of the things was that they costed a lot more to build, and they built a lot less of them. Like they only built a little over 1,300 Tiger tanks, and over 8,800 medium, I think they were Panther tanks for the Germans. It's just the scale, like how much it cost and how much metal you needed to build all of that armor. And so So that's why the tanks are going to cost a little bit more, and that's why they're going to absorb the hits, and that's why they're going to defend better than they attack. So what I envision is that these will be your offensive tanks, the out of box ones. They will be the tank that you come to know and love over the years. And these, you wouldn't want to buy them for offense. You could, of course, if you didn't have to move very far, but mostly what they're going to be good for is buying them for defensive purposes. And that's heavy tanks. So staying on the theme of tanks, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. It's something that I mentioned in a previous video, and that is Tankograd. Let's move this thing up to here. Okay, so right somewhere around here is where Tankograd was. If you've ever heard of Tankograd, what that was is a tractor factory that was built in the 30s by the Russians, and they repurposed it in 1941 to build tanks. Most of the factories were to the west of that, like in front of the Russian homeworld, or in the territory of Russia as you see it there. But then when the Germans decided to attack, it was best for the Russians, and it was an incredible feat how they did it. They moved all of their, well, not all of them, they moved a number of factories to the east of Russia to keep them out of the way of the advancing Germans. There was 3 major factories near Tankograd. There was but Tankograd, before they moved, there was about 25,000 workers in that town. And then by 1944, there was 60,000 workers in Tankograd. And Tankograd, translated in English, means tank city. That's why they call it Tankograd, because everybody there was building tanks. And the second reason why they built them there is because the Ural Mountains are along here. And they're very, very rich in minerals. And so all they needed to build to convert the rock into metal was right there. And so they didn't have to go very far to get the raw materials to build their tanks. Aside from tanks, they built a lot more tank engines than they did tanks, so they were able to ship those engines out. They built munitions, they built tank destroyers. But in that town, that's about it. That's for the most part what they built. And it turned out to be a good move for the Russians. It kept them out of the way of the advancing Germans, because the Germans almost made it to Moscow. They were right there. They of course made it to Stalingrad. Now, in order to institute a rule for this, and I really wanted to, was you could have. I think what they tried to do in this game, when you start the game off, there's a tank and a mechanized unit that starts in Volgograd here, which was Stalingrad. And I think they just kind of tried to simulate Tankograd there. And you could just make that into Tankograd, but I don't want to do that, because that was such a pivotal place during World War II. The war kind of was in the balance right there. If the Germans would have won the Battle of Stalingrad, I mean, that might have changed history a great deal. There was a couple of pivotal moments in World War II, and that was one of them. So I want to keep that the way it is. They really needed to get through there and get south to the oil fields, because they were running out of resources. They were running out of fuel for their war machines, and so stopping them there really was the turning point where the Allies were able to turn the tide. And then, of course, they chased them all the way back to Berlin, and Hitler ended up shooting himself. So what we're going to do for Tankograd is we're going to take a minor factory, and this isn't going to cost the Russians anything. We're just going to put a minor factory on when the Germans declare war on Russia, when they attack Russia. We're going to put this minor factory on Samara there, and that's Tankograd. And what will happen is that it's the same. You can only build 3 units there. You can build any kind of 3 units you want, but tanks, if you build tanks there, whether they're regular tanks or heavy tanks, these will cost 1 IPC cheaper. And we're not charging for this factory, because if you charged 12 IPCs for that factory, then by the time you ended up paying off that factory by taking an IPC off for each tank, Russia would have been overrun. So the factory is free because the factory already existed. It was making tractors. It would have cost a bit to convert it, but it was an already existing factory that they used, and it's just converted over to doing tanks. And then if it's taken out by either any of the Axis powers, then this factory is just going to get destroyed. We're just going to take it out of the game. It's not going to be a factory that they can use. They can't build cheaper tanks now. It'll just be gone. So that's Tankograd. There was one thing that I forgot to mention in an earlier video that I did with the Special Forces unit. I had made that video a few times, and so I mentioned the cost in probably the first 3 of the videos, and then in my head I thought that I'd talked about the cost in the video in the 4th video that I did keep and put on YouTube. So the cost of that Special Forces unit is 6 IPCs. So if you've seen that unit and were wondering to yourself, well, how much does the damn thing cost? Well, that's it. And if you remember that video, I used green chips underneath the Special Forces unit. But since then, my markers have come in. So each nation has its own Special Forces markers. There's a commando one there, and here's the one that we have for the Italian player. And here we got the German markers. I'm just using the SS markers for the Germans there. Anyway, everybody's got their own marker, so that's pretty cool. So that's about all I got for you today. Heavy tanks, Tankograd. If you like this video, then leave a comment and have a good day. Bye.